The cockpit door doesn't open. On the other side of it, a man is knocking, then pounding, then shouting. Inside the cockpit, the aircraft is flying perfectly. No alarms, no warnings, no hijacking code. Yet the plane is descending, slowly, deliberately. At 38,000 feet above Europe, Germanwings Flight 9525 is on a collision course with the mountains. And the most terrifying part? The danger isn't outside the aircraft, it's already inside. March 24th, 2015. It's a clear spring morning in Barcelona, Spain. Germanwings Flight 9525 is scheduled for a short, routine trip to Düsseldorf, Germany. Just under 2 hours in the air. This is the kind of route pilots fly multiple times a week. Short, familiar, almost boring. There's no ocean crossing, no extreme weather, no complicated approach. The flight plan is straightforward, and the crew has done this before. The aircraft is an Airbus A320, one of the most reliable passenger planes in the world. No technical issues, no weather warnings, no delays. On board are 144 passengers and 6 crew members. Families returning home, business travelers, students, tourists. Some passengers are checking the time, calculating when they'll land. Others are scrolling through their phones, listening to music, or staring out the window as the plane climbs over Spain. Flight attendants move through the cabin, performing the same safety routines they've done hundreds of times before. Nothing about this flight stands out, and that's exactly why no one sees what's coming. In the cockpit are 2 men, Captain Patrick Sondenheimer, experienced, respected, calm. First Officer Andreas Lubitz, young, ambitious, quiet. The captain has logged thousands of flight hours. He's known for being professional and composed. The co-pilot, Andreas Lubitz, is 27 years old. He passed his training. He earned his place in the cockpit. On paper, there is nothing unusual about him being there. At 10:27 a.m., the plane reaches cruising altitude, 38,000 feet. Everything is normal. The autopilot is engaged. The aircraft stabilizes. The engines hum steadily. This is the safest phase of flight, where pilots mostly monitor systems rather than actively fly. A few minutes later, the captain does something pilots do every day. He leaves the cockpit briefly. The cockpit door closes behind him, and it locks. Inside the cockpit, Andreas Lubitz is now alone. At this point, nothing seems unusual to anyone else on the aircraft. The cabin crew continues their work. Passengers remain unaware. Even air traffic control sees nothing alarming yet. Almost immediately, the plane begins to descend. Not sharply, not dangerously, just enough to go unnoticed at first. Air traffic control watches as Flight 9525 slowly drops from cruising altitude. They assume it's routine. But then the descent continues and continues. The aircraft is no longer leveling off. It keeps going lower, minute by minute. Controllers attempt to contact the cockpit. Calls from air traffic control go unanswered. No mayday call, no emergency signal, no explanation. The silence is what begins to worry them. Pilots are trained to respond, even briefly. A simple acknowledgement would be enough. But there is nothing. That's when controllers realize something is very wrong. Outside the cockpit door, the captain returns. He tries the keypad. Nothing. He knocks, no response. He knocks harder. Still nothing. Inside the cockpit, the co-pilot does not respond. The cockpit voice recorder later reveals something chilling. You can hear calm breathing. No panic, no distress, just silence. This detail becomes one of the most haunting parts of the investigation. The aircraft is descending toward mountainous terrain, yet the person controlling it shows no signs of urgency. The captain begins to pound on the door. His knocking turns into banging. His voice grows louder. He calls out repeatedly. He tries to force the door. The plane continues its descent. After the 9/11 attacks, cockpit doors were redesigned to be nearly impossible to force open. Even the captain cannot override it from the outside. Once locked from inside, the door stays locked. This system was designed to protect passengers from terrorists. On this day, it trapped everyone inside the aircraft. Controllers now see the plane descending rapidly toward the French Alps. This is not a loss of control. It's controlled flight. The autopilot is doing exactly what it's told, which means someone is giving commands. Repeated calls are made. Germanwings 9525, do you read? Silence. Fighter jets are scrambled, but it's too late. The plane is already too low. Passengers begin to sense something is wrong. The descent is noticeable now. Ears pop. The angle feels wrong. Through the windows, mountains are visible, growing larger far sooner than expected. There is no announcement from the cockpit, no reassurance, no explanation. In the final minutes, sounds can be heard in the cockpit recording. The captain attempting to break the door. A desperate voice shouting. The sound of impact approaching. At 10:41 a.m., Germanwings Flight 9525 crashes into the French Alps at over 600 kilometers per hour. The aircraft disintegrates on impact. All 150 people on board are killed instantly. The crash site is remote and difficult to reach. Debris is scattered across the mountainside, confirming that the plane was intact until the moment of impact. The crash site is remote and difficult to reach. Debris is scattered across the mountainside, confirming that the plane was intact until the moment of impact. At first, officials assume mechanical failure, weather conditions, pilot error during landing. But debris scattered across the mountains tells a different story. There was no explosion mid-air, no sign of structural failure. This plane was flown into the mountain on purpose. When investigators recover the cockpit voice recorder, the truth becomes impossible to ignore. The co-pilot locked the captain out. He manually set the autopilot to descend. He ignored all attempts to communicate. He remained calm until the very end. This was not an accident. This was deliberate. Andreas Lubitz was 27 years old. By all outward appearances, intelligent, well-trained, passionate about flying. He dreamed of becoming a commercial pilot. He worked hard to achieve it. Friends and colleagues described him as reserved, but capable. But beneath the surface, there was something far more troubling. Lubitz had a history of severe depression. Medical records later revealed episodes of suicidal thoughts, anxiety about losing his medical license, visits to multiple doctors shortly before the crash. Some doctors had even declared him unfit to fly. But here's the most controversial part. The airline never knew. In Germany, medical confidentiality laws are strict. Doctors are not required to inform employers unless there is an immediate threat. Lubitz hid medical notes that grounded him. He continued flying. This raised a terrifying question. What happens when mental health privacy conflicts with passenger safety? The aviation world had no clear answer. Families of the victims were devastated and furious. They asked, why was one pilot ever left alone? Why couldn't the cockpit be overridden? Why wasn't mental health monitored more closely? Lawsuits followed. Public outrage spread across Europe. Trust in aviation safety was shaken. In the aftermath, airlines rushed to act. New rules were introduced. 2 people must always be in the cockpit. Increased mental health screenings. Peer support programs for pilots. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Some of these rules were quietly rolled back years later. Why? Because constant monitoring also increased stress and stigma among pilots. The industry was caught between safety and trust. Germanwings Flight 9525 forced the world to confront something uncomfortable. Modern aircraft are incredibly advanced, but they still rely on the human mind. And when that mind breaks silently, there may be no warning at all. This plane did not fail. The engines worked, the systems worked, the autopilot worked. Everything functioned perfectly, except one human decision. At 38,000 feet, with 149 other lives depending on him, one man made a choice that could not be undone. And the plane followed orders. Germanwings. Flight 9525 reminds us of a chilling truth. Sometimes the most dangerous failure in aviation is not mechanical, not technical, but silent.